accessory dwelling units, go over here on our presentation. So what I plan to do is just go through background information, the summary of proposed changes, recommendations from staff and planning commission, and our recommended action and motion for consideration. Background, all I can say is our accessory dwelling unit regulations, they contain conflicting provisions. Under one section, the accessory dwelling units are listed as a permitted use in the residential zone. And another section, portion of that same section, they're called out as being a conditional use permit in that particular zone, which requires a hearing with the hearing examiner. So obviously it creates some confusion for staff on how to process a conditional use permit, or CUP for short. And actually these provisions created quite a bit of expense for a property owner that requested a accessory dwelling unit just recently, late last year, and created additional costs for that person to get the permit because of this provision, causing confusion on how to administer that particular permit between staff and our consultants at the time. The other thing is there's a section in the existing regulations that state that if I believe it was 6 or more adjacent property owners object to the accessory dwelling unit, then the city can't approve it. Well, that abrogates the legislative authority of the city council. You can't do that. You can't give the citizens to do that. There wasn't anything in the code that provides criteria for granting the citizens to be able to do that, nor was there an appeal process of somebody appealed. So we have to take that completely out. And so, because it is legislative authority on dealing with those, lies strictly with the council, and how we deal with those ADUs. And actually, underneath the proposed revisions, the ADU permit would be an administrative permit that would be approved by the community development manager, which would be appealable to the city's hearing examiner. And again, like I said, there was other inconsistencies that made it difficult to administer the accessory dwelling unit regulations. The Planning Commission reviewed the proposed revisions in 3 separate meetings. They held a public hearing on these on January 27th and recommended approval of the proposed revisions. The Governance Committee reviewed the proposed revisions at their December 9th meeting. They requested one change that was incorporated into the Planning Commission's recommendation, and that dealt with the number of off-street parking spaces required for an ADU relative to a studio or a one-bedroom ADU. Current regulations require two spaces, period, regardless of how big the ADU is. The change here would, for a studio or one-bedroom unit, only require one extra off-street parking space and a 2-bedroom, 2 off-street parking spaces. And one last thing, we had in the previous revisions, we had a provision that limited the number of people in an ADU, but the city attorney requested that provision be struck because there might be some legal issues with that based on some court cases that have come up fairly recently.
So there's no provisions for limiting?
There's no provisions for limiting.
So they can put 45 people in the facility? I mean, there's got to be, isn't there some restriction on how many people can live in a residence?
No, there isn't. Under the Federal Fair Housing Act, you can't limit the number of people who can live in a residence.
So you can have 12 people living in a one-bedroom apartment?
Well, you can't, they could say that it's their entire family, and you can't limit the number of people who can be in a family and be in a single-family residence.
Wow.
Yeah. One area where this is silent, and I'm just curious what our policy is, does this require a separate water meter, and is it a separate sewer connection?
Yes.
Are you?
That's for detached ADUs.
Yeah, assuming it's detached, yeah.
Detached. Councilman McGovern?
Sorry, this is like a mother-in-law apartment.
Yeah, you can call them,
It has to be a structure, it can't be a mobile home or a trailer.
well, what you have is that the design standards for an ADU have to match the character of the primary residence. So unless the primary residence is a trailer, then an a trailer ADU couldn't match that similarity, so.
But it could be a manufactured home.
Yeah. Right. That's correct. So just a quick summary of the proposed changes. Removes provision that allows adjacent property owners to deny the ADU. That provides application requirements. Those are required under the Growth Management Act. Off-street parking requirements change to allow one space for studio and one-bedroom ADUs. Current standard is 2. This was a major change here. The fourth bullet here, the size of the detached ADUs is reduced from the 1,200 square feet to 800 square feet in the RS6 zone and 1,000 square feet in the RS11 zone. And I'll get to kind of the reasoning behind that fairly soon. In looking at this particular standard, we looked at a variety of different jurisdictions. We looked at 25 adjacent jurisdictions or ones that are pretty much the size of, similar size of Pacific. And I provided you a matrix of those as an attachment to your agenda bill so you can see what those jurisdictions were. The 800 square foot requirement is a pretty common one. 40% of the jurisdictions for a detached ADU, that was a requirement, and for an attached ADU, that was 45% of it. So we're right in the middle in the bunch. And the whole reason for that, and here's by example, this ADU, this is City of SeaTac. Their standard is 700 square feet, if I recall, or 800 square feet. This is a 700 square foot ADU in the City of SeaTac. As you can see the main residence behind and the ADU out front, and you can see how it matches the character of the existing residence in there. The purpose for lowering the size of the whole fact is, by definition, it's supposed to be an accessory dwelling unit, accessory to the main unit. It's not supposed to be the main residence on the site. The intent is to provide, as you know, it'd be a mother-in-law type unit or a unit for aging parents where they can live independently from their kids, but still feel like they're independent on the same lot, in that the kids in that case will be able to watch out for their parents. It's not intended to be an actual new dwelling unit on the property, and that's why we lowered the ADU requirements. Quite frankly, the 1,200 square feet for the ADUs right now, it's actually bigger than some of the regular houses that we have in the city. So we lowered it. And we feel it's a reasonable standard. In the RS11 zone, we felt it was reasonable to go to the 11, just down to 1,000 because they're bigger lots. And typically they're kind of bigger houses on those lots, and we felt it would fit into the neighborhood a little bit better in that respect still. So we kept it at 1,000 there. Yes.
Latest percentage of property, latest percentage of property consumption by between the houses, with the offset off the property edges.
Well, they'll still have to meet the setback standards for the zoning classification. They still have to meet the distance requirements between structures, which is 10 feet. That's just plain fire code requirements. And they'll still have to meet what they call the building lot coverage standards of the city. So you can't, if you already have, for example, you're already up to the maximum building lot coverage requirements of the zone, you can't put an ADU on it because it would go over that particular requirement. So, you still have to meet all the different requirements of the code.
Would we, in that case, allow construction of an ADU within the existing footprint of the house, partitioning off and putting in the side entrance and all that?
Yes. Yeah. It would, and I was just getting to it, because it's within an existing residence that would be no greater than 45% of the residence. Current standard is 60%. So 45% is pretty much the common standard that other cities use.
It's a very common one, to convert a two-car garage into an ADU.
Right.
So it's no additional square footage, it's converting into.
And then the other standard that we put in here that wasn't covered by our code, current code, is if they built an addition onto the existing residence, then it could be no more than 45% or 800 square feet, whichever is the lesser of the two. So this is an additional standard that's not within the current code. So with that, the staff and planning commission have recommended that the city council adopt the proposed revisions to chapter 29.2 for the accessory dwelling units, and recommended action is the open discussion of the proposed revisions, and depending on your discussions, motion to put on the council on the next council meeting, which will be March 9th for adoption. And that's my presentation. Questions?
Do we have a feel for how many ADU permits we currently have, and possibly how many unpermitted ADUs we have in the city?
Well, I know we have at least one, since we just permitted one. I don't have it there. Over the past years, I think I've been told about 7 over the past years. Quite frankly, nobody told us about it. We don't know how many undocumented ones are out there, unless somebody complains to us about it. So.
And then second question coming after that is, do they contribute towards our density requirements for residential?
Yes, they do.